Hi, my name is Tyler Griffin. I'm the Vice President of North College Republicans.
And my name is Leslie Lovett. I'm the Secretary of Affairs here. And today we have Mr. Mark Palmer. Mr. Mark Palmer is from Chester County. He is will soon be representing District 17 down there in Columbia. And my first question today is, who is Mr. Mark Palmer?
Well, Mr. Mark Palmer lives in York County, actually.
Okay, well, York County.
No big deal. I love the people down in Chester County. I am a father. I'm a husband. Been married to Holly for 20 years now. We actually met right here on this campus at Winthrop.
Oh, really?
We met in biology classes. And we've got a daughter. We've got a 17-year-old. I keep forgetting. She's 18. She turned 18 this past Saturday.
You're going to start going to college soon, right?
So she's all grown up. She's actually she's looking at Charleston Southern.
Okay, at least you're saying state. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We would definitely do that. I am a retired military officer. I retired as a major in 2014. I served for 28 years in the South Carolina Army National Guard. I worked for United Refrigeration. Now, this company used to be C.C. Dixon, but they were bought out about 5 years ago. And in that 5 years, we were allowed to keep our name. But this past May, we had to change our name to United Refrigeration. So C.C. Dixon, the company that's been around since 1933, is now gone. It is United Refrigeration. I'm an elder in the Presbyterian Church, a ruling elder, and just an American. I love the United States of America and proud to have served for it.
Well, thank you for your service. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Now, what made you decide to run for state senate?
Well, I've thought about it for a while. I have watched our Senate fail to accomplish things for many years now. There's some things that you just have to do in government, and one of the main things is transparency. Government has to be transparent because the people in government, the people who are elected to offices, are elected as representatives in general, except for the executive branch and judiciary. But in legislative branches, they're supposed to represent people. For instance, the district that I'm trying to represent is made up of about 105,000 South Carolina residents. And it's my job to go to the legislature and stand on their behalf and represent them when we write laws. And in the past few years, we've just observed that the Senate is failing to accomplish anything. The ethics bills that we need, the roads bills that we need, and we'll probably go into those in more detail shortly. But you can talk about things and talk about things and talk about things, but eventually you have to actually do something.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm running. I want to do something about those things.
Yeah, because a lot of those problems will roll on to us if somebody like you doesn't step in and
You're exactly right.
and solve it for us. You just touched on a few, but what kind of changes would you like to see brought to the South Carolina infrastructure system?
Well, the most important thing we need is transparency.
Mhm.
Because transparency allows the voters to know where people stand, know where their elected representatives stand. And if you don't know where they stand, then you can't trust that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Other things I'd like to see reforms in government overall. We have and some of these things would actually require constitutional changes, not simply just legislation. But we have a very weak governorship, executive branch here in the state of South Carolina. So much of what happens here in South Carolina is actually controlled by the legislature, either through commissions or through cabinet or boards. Most of the people on those boards are appointed by a few most powerful legislators. So as a result of that, the people in the state, and in particular in districts that aren't under the control of those senior legislators, are neglected because those commissions and boards are responsive to the legislators who appoint them, and there are few legislators that get to appoint many of the cabinet and board members.
So like the areas of South Carolina where the roads are the worst are probably the areas where they're not represented on these committees.
Right. The taxpayers have no way to hold anyone accountable because the legislators who appoint these boards and these committees, commissions is really the word I was looking for. The commissions, the Transportation Commission, they're unaccountable to the taxpayer. the taxpayer can't hold them accountable. They can't hold the legislators accountable because they don't vote for those legislators. Right. There are roughly 2 counties in South Carolina that have benefited greatly from Department of Transportation efforts, right. And other counties out of 46 of them have suffered.
Yeah. You see, and you were talking about changes in the executive branch and on the state level. In 2018, the lieutenant governor will now be on the same ballot with the governor. So I guess we're moving a little bit towards what the changes.
Yes, sir. You're exactly right.
What are ways you would like to see to improve the education system in rural areas?
The problem with education in the rural districts is that parents need to be involved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a huge issue, and teachers are doing their best to teach these children and give them the education that they deserve and that they need. Right. If they're going to be productive citizens, they need a solid education, and they can't get that in schools that are inadequately funded or inadequately equipped. You take a school district where there's a good tax base, and they can have laptops and they can have iPads and all those sorts of tools. Well, we need to make sure that all schools have those tools.
Right. Well, I'm hoping to become a social studies teacher myself, and I grew up in the foremost school district, so I know that that's one of the best school districts in South Carolina. But you can't say that, okay, we're going to take what we did in Fort Mill and apply it everywhere, and because you're right, it doesn't have the same tax base, so you've got to try and get these resources to all the school districts, but you can't expect one thing from one school district to work to every single one.
Right.
And that's a problem when the federal government tries to get involved with it,
You're exactly right.
Now, you touched on earlier that you served in the military. How do you feel like your military experience will help you in the state legislature?
Well, military prepares people for hardships.
Yeah.
Well, except the U.S. Air Force. Now, that prepares them for room service. So, but my military experience, I'll tell you probably the best example of why I will make a great legislator based on my military experience. In Iraq, I was a contracting officer assistant. And what I would do is I would go out and negotiate contracts with the Iraqi people, with particularly the Iraqi contractors. And what I would do is I would always protect our taxpayer, always. In fact, many of the contractors that I worked with called me the tight-fisted American because when I'm negotiating with taxpayers' money, I was very tight-fisted. Yeah. I would allow them to make enough profit to advance and raise their families and protect their interests, but I didn't let them take advantage of the United States taxpayer. So that I'm familiar with bureaucracy. I've worked in bureaucracy, and I've seen how at the end of a fiscal year, most government organizations will go into that rat race of trying to spend every dime that they've been allotted or budgeted, and I've never favored that, but I have witnessed it up close. And as a legislator, I would seek to try and reverse that process or that practice.
Well, thank you again for your service to our country.
My pleasure.
We're hoping that your next time serving can be in the state legislature.
I hope so.
Now we're going to move on to some personal questions, a little less political.
All right.
What is something about you that you feel like not many people know?
Well, not many people know that I sang professionally at Ghost Town in Maggie Valley, North Carolina.
Really?
I sang with a singing dancing group in Southern California called Celebration. This was in the 80s. And most people don't know that because I don't dance. I was sort of a soloist. I would always volunteer to do the songs, but when it came to the real complex dancing, I was not one to do that.
Now, did you still rock the military cut, or did you have like a nice 80s kind of style going on back then?
Oh, yeah, I did. I did.
Who is someone that inspires you politically, and someone who inspires you just personally?
Well, politically, I would say I'm inspired by Ronald Reagan. I think he was he was given the title the Great Communicator, and indeed he was the Great Communicator. But he was more than that. He was an excellent leader. And he had a sense of humor. I loved his sense of humor when he was shot by John Hinckley, and the doctors had him on the table. He said, "You guys are Republicans, right?" Yeah. I think that's just typical of Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And then, of course, his famous line about, what is it? We've just launched the missiles. I can't remember. I can't quote it, but maybe you guys might remember. But he had a sense of humor. He was a great leader. And so he inspires me politically. Now, non-politically, you know what inspires me? I love to see couples that have been married for more years than I've been alive. That inspires me.
Right. Yeah.
I'm inspired by young people getting involved in politics and getting involved in the world and becoming aware and not being a part of that bread and circuses atmosphere that we have so much of in America today. That so many people, you know, I used to get irritated with my fellow guys in the military. They could name off who was the MVP or who got the most yards in professional football, but they didn't know any of the legislators. They couldn't tell you who represented them in Congress. They couldn't name a single Supreme Court justice. They just had no idea what was going on in the world that really matters.
Right.
You know, it's fine that you know, in addition to these facts, that Michael Jordan scored 40 points in a game last night, but that's not what really matters.
You just touched on, talking about young people getting involved. At what point in your life did you realize that you were conservative?
It was during the Reagan era. It was his the liberals made fun of it. They called it trickle down economics and said it wouldn't work. But it was his plain and clear speaking about the free market system that convinced me I was a Republican, conservative.
What is your message to young voters, especially now in this time of you see a lot of things that go on college campuses? You see a lot of college students who support other candidates.
Bernie Sanders, for instance.
That's
where you're going.
Yeah. What is your message to them?
My message to them is very simple, and it's an old message. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. Not it probably is. It is. For those of you young folks who think that you're going to get a free college education, let me tell you, what's happening is they're going to reach into someone else's pocket and take that money out. Some politician is making you a promise that he's going to get your college paid for and it's going to be free. Well, what's really going to happen is he's going to reach in someone else's pocket and get that money out. But let me warn you, it's just around the corner when they're going to be reaching into your pocket to pay for other people's things. So that's my warning to young people. You don't, nothing's free in this world. And I tell you, it concerns me because you folks are going to carry the brunt of this national debt that we have. So, friends, just live by a moral code. You're not entitled to what I have or what I own, and I'm not entitled to what you own.
Well, we really appreciate you coming out for this interview. You did a really great job. We're hoping that you can represent District 17 real soon for us.
All right. Well, me too.
Thank you so much, Mr. Palmer.
Me too, gentlemen.
Thank
What
you.
a pleasure to meet you all.